Alright, upon reviewing the previous video that I shot, I apparently forgot to enable my mic, so it's entirely without audio. So I'm going to go over what I'm doing right now. And what I'm doing right now is installing a piece of software called Wine. It's right here. Wine Vanilla is what I'm installing. There's a number of other items. You've got Wine Staging and Wine Proton, but I'm using Wine Vanilla. The thing about Wine Vanilla is, currently, under Gentoo, we have 4 different versions of Wine: 7.0.1, which is regarded as stable, 7.19, 7.22, and 99.99. It is a good thing that in one of my previous segments we installed Git, because what we're doing over here actually required Git. And what we're doing over there is running the following command: egit commit equals wine-8.0-rc4 emerge equals app-emulation/wine-vanilla-9999. And the reason we're running that is because we're trying to install the latest available version of Wine. However, it does not have an e-build here. So what we're doing is we're taking the Wine Vanilla 9999 e-build and we're using that to install 8.0 RC4. Here's the information which gives you the commit name for this. It's wine-8.0-RC4. There are, of course, older commits such as 8.0 RC3, 8.0 RC2, RC1, wine 722, and 722 would obviously be the same as this right here. Now, we've had to make a number of changes to the system in order to make this actually work. The first of which was this: package.accept keywords/app-emulation. We've added 2 lines to app-emulation. For app emulation Wine Vanilla 9999 specifically, we've added a keyword of ***. Now you can't add *** directly. You would have to do echo app-emulation, well in this case equals app-emulation/wine-vanilla-9999 \****. You have to use the backslashes to escape the star so that the output will actually show as this line right here, just like that. Because if you don't, it's going to do that. That's not what you want. So escape the stars, and it does that. Obviously, you push that output to this particular file using the double angles, and along the way we've also had to add a keyword for this one right here, which is wine mono. We've had to use ~AMD64. Additionally, we've had to, using the output from the first attempt at emerging Wine Vanilla 9999, we have had to enable a few other use flags. So package.use/ABIX8632. We've enabled a number of new use flags for ABIX8632. Anything below this line, I think, is entirely new. Additionally, for package.use/app-emulation, we've added a few use flags for Wine Vanilla, namely UDEV, UDisks, and USB, so that it has access to those particular functions within Wine. Now, what are we going to be doing with Wine? Well, we are going to be installing a Windows app from AppDB. Specifically, we're going to be installing a game, which I have had a subscription to for quite a number of years now. This is actually the game that first got me interested in running Wine, and I've tested this game under multiple Linux distributions. We can actually see that under here, show all tests. There we go. You can see I've tested it under Ubuntu. Obviously, I've tested it under Gentoo. I've tested it under Pop! OS. We go a little bit further down. No, not that far down. This far down. I've tested it under Knoppix. I've tested it under FreeBSD, Slackware, Fedora, Vanilla Debian. I've tested it under a number of different Linux distributions. And I should point out that FreeBSD is not a Linux distribution. That's a BSD distribution. That's something somewhat different. It's still an open source project, but it's not a Linux. If I'm going to get into the history of this, I actually picked this up back in 2008. I was playing this game on a dual booting AMD Athlon 64 machine, and I decided I wanted to give it a shot in Linux, so I pulled up my Linux install, which at the time was Gentoo Linux x86 64, and actually I think it was right here. Tested it on May 3rd, did not get good results. Going forward, I think Nick right here introduced a patch which I analyzed and found out that it was basically a sanity check just to make sure that values being passed to one of the Windows APIs were valid values being passed, because the game was passing invalid values like no other, which was causing a massive slowdown. So I tested it here, I gave it a bronze rating because it was slightly better, and I tested it again in September of 2008 when it was a lot better. At this point, I notified Gannyman, who is or I should say was a notable member in the Final Fantasy XI community, and he tested it out. He thought the same of it as I did, and for a while I was silent on the entire issue right up until about 2016, when I decided to pick the game back up. Now it looks like I tried it in 2010. Came out pretty good on that try. But my main entry back onto the scene was in 2016, when I decided to test it on Vanilla Debian, Gentoo Linux, all of these various different Linux and FreeBSD distributions, and I intend to test the latest release candidate, which is RC4, on this particular system. I'm expecting it to run quite well, given the results I'm having on my production machine. This, of course, is just a test rig, so it doesn't have exactly the latest hardware, but I'm expecting it to run pretty much similar. Now, as far as installation, they've got a how-to right here, but it's somewhat dated. Also, it is more geared towards installation under Ubuntu and, from the looks of it, Mac OS, but what we're doing is installing under Gentoo Linux. In the process of testing under Ubuntu, which I did right here and gave it a gold rating, in the process of doing that, I also documented my process of installing on a Final Fantasy XI wiki, which would be the Gamer Escape Final Fantasy XI wiki. Yes, I know there's a lot of ads here. Not much I can do to avoid that without logging in, and I'd rather not do that. Go to the wiki for Final Fantasy XI. The best how-to for this on Ubuntu is probably the one that I wrote up. And as you can see, I wrote this up on November 19th. But this is for Ubuntu, and we are running on Gentoo, which is a very, very different system. As you can see, we've still got quite a ways to go on the install, so I'm going to do a jump cut to the end of the installation, and we'll see just how it works. Alright, looks like Wine has finally finished installing and compiling and all that other stuff. Now, from this page right here, you need to click the download link for your region. I'm in the US region, so I'll click this one. And we need to download all of these. This is going to take a while. That actually took a lot less time than I was expecting. Regardless, we need to downgrade to our regular user and run wine cfg. I forgot to do this. eSelect wine list. /etsy/eselect/wine/bin missing from path. May need to run ./etsy/profile. ./etsy/profile. There. It has to build out the wine configuration. You want to set Windows to something reasonable. And for audio, you'll want to set the output device to whatever your output device is. And obviously we can see that it's Wine 8.0 RC4, despite the fact that 8.0 RC4, the e-build, is not available on our system. That's pretty much all we needed to take a look at here, all we needed to change. So we need to go to CD downloads, and you'll see all these files that we just downloaded are all here. So we go ff11 full setup.part1.exe. We run that through Wine. There. Now to install Final Fantasy XI, you want to enable Final Fantasy XI and Play Online Viewer. You don't need to enable the DirectX runtime. Play Online Viewer should run as normal. See Program Files x86 Play Online. It'll show you this, but that's an abstracted directory. That is actually within your home directory. The directory it's referring to as the C drive, is actually under this hidden directory, .wine, under drive_C. So it's there, but it ain't. Create a desktop shortcut, no real need to do that. Then we click the Finish button. Now here it will appear to freeze for at least a couple of minutes. I think the amount of time it takes to process all of this is entirely contingent on how much drive space you actually have. Because at this point it says computing space requirements, and I don't think it's playing all that nice with the fact that we're kind of using a virtual drive and there's files on that virtual drive that it cannot access. On other Linux systems, it may show something like the program's frozen up or something of that sort. Ignore those warnings and let it continue running. I should also note that this usually takes a while on Windows as well, but definitely not this long. Okay, there we go. And that only took however long it took. Don't need to create a desktop shortcut. And once again, it goes to computing space requirements. Why it has to do this twice, I may never know. Finally, setup complete. I really do not feel like continuing this tonight, so I'm going to cut this segment short. We'll pick it back up tomorrow morning. Or tomorrow whenever I get the feeling like actually working on it. We'll pick it up tomorrow. And here we are. Back, and it's the next day, just as I said. We're going to need to do a couple of things with the Final Fantasy XI install. Namely, we're going to need to go through the configuration both for Play Online Viewer and for Final Fantasy XI. Now, by default, most of the configurations for Play Online Viewer are just fine, except for this. You want to set all the buttons to whatever you want to set them to. For some reason, it's not taking the secondary shoulder buttons. That's no big deal. Save those settings. Then we go to the Final Fantasy XI config. I'd prefer to run it in 1600 by 900. We'll put it at 1600 by 1200 and just modify the settings after that. We can leave pretty much everything else at default. Also, disable play opening movie. 1, it's had some historical issues playing through Wine, and 2, if you actually go through, watch the whole opening movie, it'll force you to re-log back in. The lobby server is going to kick you off, and you don't want that. It looks like everything else is just fine, except we need to go into gamepad settings. As you'll notice, I'm hitting a button here and nothing's happening. That's because for some reason, despite the fact that this Logitech dual action controller is not an X input type controller, the thing still expects X input. I don't know why, it's just a quirk. And movement. Down, right, left. And you'll notice a little bit of flickering here, that's no big deal. Camera. Up, down, right, left. Again, a little bit of flickering, no big deal. Menus, up, down, right, left. Flickering, again, no big deal. Test gamepad. Make sure everything's exactly as you expect it. And on this screen you don't get much flickering with the little dot that indicates movement. It's an option for vibration test, however my gamepad does not have vibration. We're just going to disable force feedback. Save changes. And close out. Save changes. It looks like everything's good, except, like I said, we need to do a couple of edits here. Because we're running in windowed mode, the window needs to be smaller than the screen. And if I'm not mistaken, it's under here. So we open this up, put it to decimal, and change that 1200 to 900. Also change this 1200 to 900. And there we go. We can close out of this now, and we should be able to run Final Fantasy XI and play online with no particular issue. Let's get to it. Both of these are going to require updates prior to actually running, so we'll open up Play Online Viewer first. Good Lord, that is loud. First things first. Way down on here, and mute over here. There. You could probably still hear it a little bit out of my microphone. That's kind of as intended. Next, update. This is updating the Play Online Viewer application, which is used to launch Final Fantasy XI and pretty much nothing else at this point. Used to be that it was used to launch, let's see, there was a Front Mission Online and some sort of Mahjong game that were both available in Japan, but the only other application that was launched from Play Online Viewer that was available here in the United States was Tetra Master, and the servers for that got shut down, I have no idea how long ago. I would say at least a decade ago. After this, Play Online Viewer is probably going to reload, and when it does, we're going to need to actually register a user. And it says version update for Play Online Viewer complete, and it's going to restart Play Online Viewer. I'm not familiar with the registration process. I haven't had to register an account for years. However, to my knowledge, most of the registration process is actually handled through the Square-Enix website. So most likely you've already got an account and it's registered. Once you've got that, you've got a password set up and all of that, you go here. It asks you for a member name, Play Online ID, a member password, that this is just for extra security, your Square-Enix ID, and if you have a one-time password, which I do. So your member name can be literally anything you choose. The rest of this stuff is mostly personally identifying information, so I'm going to cut this section out and come back once it's all populated and I've hit register. And there we go. The account is registered and it gives me the option to log in to Play Online right now. And that's the last time you have to deal with that atrocious music that it has on the registration page. Click on your user, click login, enter your password, and then if you selected one-time password, you got to use your security token or your software security token, which would be, I guess, on your cell phone, and enter the 6-digit password. I'm going to cut this part out too because that's just revealing part of my password. There we go. Now, hit connect, wait for it to load up. It always displays this message on your first time logging into any Play Online Viewer installation. Just scroll to the bottom and hit accept. Always click don't show again on that. I don't think the quote-unquote mail service is working anymore. And as far as the time here, I really don't understand why Microsoft can't get their system running on UTC time, because obviously this system right here has its time set to UTC and it's throwing the local time zone at the software that's running underneath it. It should be very simple for Microsoft to adapt that code to make older software that expects the system time to be set to local time to actually work. But no, just doesn't work that way. Now we hit play right here, but the thing is, when we hit play, it's going to ask us to update. Well, first it's going to give us this kind of disclaimer like don't betray your friends and family and all of that stuff. Hit play. Actually, no, we're going to have to go back. Yes, version update canceled. We know. Since I do not want this thing to automatically log me out, I am going to have to go here. I knew I set up the gamepad for a reason. You're going to want to turn the auto disconnect off. And if you don't care so much about people using foul language, turn the language filter off. Save and apply changes. Then close out of that menu, then go to play, hit play, then like say it'll ask you to update, and this update is known to take a very long time. Honestly, if I were using the oldest installation media I could, this update would take a lot longer. I'm going to cut this stream short and I'm going to jump cut to whenever the update actually finishes, or sometime thereafter. And as you can see, we are back. It says version update completed. Hit OK. It loads up to a window measuring 1600 pixels by 900 pixels. I'd honestly expected this to load a little bit smoother. In fact, I had expected it to load a lot smoother. But in any case, this is how it performs on underpowered hardware on an underpowered system, with likely underpowered specs. Let's load up my main character. We'll go ahead and unmute the volume. Just like that. I have no idea why this is underperforming so badly. It is underperforming by a lot. Suffice to say, if we were running this on more modern hardware, we would have much less of an issue. Regardless, one of the things that you need to configure if you're running in a 16:9 aspect ratio is under gameplay. Maybe it was under miscellaneous. Nope, miscellaneous too. Full keyboard size. Background aspect ratio. Set to 16:9. I am going to have to shut this down before it causes more damage to my eyes than I would prefer. Suffice to say, I don't think this particular graphics card and CPU combination is sufficient to play the game, let alone any kind of PlayStation 2 emulation, but that's aside from the point. We'll see what we can do about that.